Engage Vernon.
I'm your new wingman.
We will win. Here we go. Because we have.
Welcome to CommLink.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the CommLink Podcast. I'm Stubb and I'm joined by Silvius. Happy New Year, man. How's it going?
Yeah, Happy New Year. It looks like you cleaned up a little bit for episode 10.
Oh yeah, a little trim to get the new year started off right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go.
Shave off all the woes of last year and start
Yeah.
fresh.
There were definitely some woes.
Yeah. But yeah, so hope everybody had a good holiday season. Hopefully everybody got to spend some time with some friends, family, loved ones. And yeah, hopefully you also got to spend some time in the verse as well. And if you were able to, maybe you treated yourself to a little Christmas present to yourself in the form of a ship pledge, like maybe some of us did over here. And if you did, let us know down in the comments below. I upgraded a Legionnaire pledge to a C1, upgraded a Dragonfly to an X1, and then also just picked up a Rambler package as well.
I didn't realize you got the X1.
Yep. I've got the X1 now as well.
And we didn't try that thing a single time while we were playing. Come on.
Oh,
Holding out on
yeah,
me.
that's right.
Holding out.
Because we were using the Cyclones, right? We wanted to test out the Cyclones. So
Yeah.
we had a recent play session, just getting a sort of a feel on what a Cyclone would be like to drive across Microtech. And oh boy, those
Not
Cyclones
good.
are feeling kind of rough.
Yeah. I feel bad for anybody. Well, not feel bad, but the Daymar rally is going to take a lot longer than it has been in previous years if that's how the vehicles are going to handle during the rally.
Yeah, and that's right. The Daymar rally's coming up really soon. And yeah, for anybody using a Cyclone, thoughts and prayers are with them, because that thing was spinning out like crazy when driving it a few days ago. So, and that was, we talked a little bit off the air about that. I was using a gamepad at the time, and I think you were saying was some talk about people using a gamepad with the ground vehicles or experiencing even worse performance with them.
Yeah, something
right?
like that. Yeah, I feel like there has to be a bug going on right now with the ground vehicles, because I've seen people, not just in the Cyclones, but the Rock, not able to climb like slight inclines to be able to reach, mineable gems that it should be able to reach. So maybe it's just something weird going on with the ground vehicles right now. They need to fix, hopefully before the Daymar rally. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're not meant to feel like that. They were definitely slower, and then anytime you tried to hit an incline, it was like it barely wanted to go.
Right. Yeah, it was not enjoyable. It was not
No.
a fun time with the Cyclone.
Yeah,
It was just straight up not fun.
I mean, in the past, I would go pull out the Cyclone RC and just, rip around Daymar or Microtech or whatever, just, to burn some time. And it was fun. And now it's just, it's not fun to drive them. So yeah, I hope something gets fixed there.
Yeah, they'll definitely need some love and attention. As far as that happening before the Daymar rally, probably not, right? I mean, CIG's still in vacation mode, right?
They did put
Or is that
out a
not-
patch today.
Did they?
Okay. Yeah, there's a
all right.
PTU patch hit about 30 minutes ago. Some
right.
bug fixes and stuff. So yeah, I guess somebody's still at the office crunching away. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just going off of Jared still gallivanting around on Twitter at I think Disney World. So
Yeah,
But-
yeah. The media team definitely isn't back. I don't think ISC comes back until not this following week, but maybe the week after, or maybe the last week in January. It's definitely on a few week hiatus.
yeah, hopefully soon. So the chunk, the meat and potatoes of this episode that we're going to be talking about, just so everybody's aware, is from Substack. It, as far as I know, it started to make the rounds today, as of recording. The article we're going to go through, we're going to read, and we're going to discuss what it talks about. But some of you may have already seen this floating around if you're really engaged with Star Citizen content on social media and people sharing different things. But for those of you that are not aware, on Substack, a user named Dan, who is in some shape, form, or fashion connected with the Pipeline Star Citizen Leaks Discord, he put up an article on Substack that talks about what potentially the next 2 years are going to be looking like for both Squadron 42 and Star Citizen. And like I said, we're going to be taking a look at that. And in the article, he's going to say it time and time again, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it right here at the start too, so that if you end up getting hopes up, I don't know what to tell you. Take all of this with a salt mine, right? Like huge grains of salt. Some of this may be true. Some of this may not be true. All of it could be BS. All of it could be true. We don't know, right? So take all of this as speculation and rumor and hearsay.
A lot of, talking about Star Citizen is speculation, but this is some very specific speculation with some, we're going to talk about some targeted dates in this article. And like Stubb said, take it with an enormous amount of grain of salt. Who knows if I'm going to go ahead and say it's probably not going to hit these dates that we're going to talk about. But be awesome if it did.
Yeah.
Probably not going to.
And also all that said too, even though we don't know any of this for fact whatsoever, even though this is all subject to change, if any of it is accurate, it's still so much fun to read. So I am looking forward to digging into this.
Yeah, this is fun to talk about, fun to speculate. Yeah. We don't want to specifically be a podcast that, focuses on leaks or internal information. And going forward, we're probably not going to, last week we talked about the supposed Mirai heavy fighter that's been in development. We showed a picture of it, but going forward, we might mention those things. We probably won't, show pictures of them anymore, but we're going to try and stray a little away from leaks and more concrete evidence, I guess I'm trying to say. But this article is mostly speculation, which we do. Most people that talk about Star Citizen speculate on everything because that's mostly all we can do until, CIG gives us some concrete information. But yeah, let's go ahead and dig into it.
Sure. All right. So here we go. I'm just going to take it from the top. All right, so from the top, Dan writes, a little more than 2 months ago, we were shown 2 days of genuinely affirming demos for a game we've all been longing for. These demos painted a picture of something we've never really had a chance to glance at before. Star Citizen's game loop. I mean, you saw it too, right? Showcasing the future of item management, the future of base building, the future of FPS combat, the future of ship combat, the future of NPC interactions, the future of networking. After so many years, it seems that CIG is finally developing Star Citizen with an end goal in mind. I'm going to take a moment and spill the majority of what we've been holding back until today. Why? Because I believe that the marketing behind the game goes too far into the narratives that surround it. Star Citizen discussion is nothing but an endless pit of speculation over dates and features as opposed to talking about any sort of concrete plans due to a hesitance to define them. The narrative we're given throughout any given year is usually the same. A glowing start, 2 quarters of various major feature delays, and a final quarter's promise of a new year worth of patches that'll finally bring the game to the next level. There's a whole bunch of nuance to whether or not we have any entitlements to this information in the first place, of course. But rather than agonizing over the morality and obligation of a game studio not telling us there, and let me fucking stress this point before you even think about scrolling further, unfinished and early plans. All right, so we'll stop there for a second. He made sure, Dan did, to put unfinished and early plans in all caps, right? So again, he is emphasizing that, even if this information is accurate, as they think that it may be. Still unfinished in early plans. All right. So everything's subject to change, folks. But before we go further into that, there have been a lot of conversations about Star Citizen's marketing, and a lot of people that have not been happy with the way that the game has been presented. They feel like a lot of the marketing um, gives off a perception that the game is more, I guess, feature complete than it actually is, or is in a better place than it actually is with performance and stability, and so with those conversations happening, and also people supposedly having sort of insider information, maybe it's not a huge surprise that finally somebody with that info decided to go, you know what, they're not going to change the marketing any. Let's get some of the stuff out there. I'm not saying it's right to do, but I understand how this sort of thing sort of all culminates. Those two issues, or not two issues, but the issue of their marketing, and then somebody having some sort of information and a strong opinion about that marketing. This was bound to happen, I think.
I think a lot of the scam talk, the people that are actually serious when they say that, comes from the CIG marketing, because you're right, they do market it as like a finished, very playable game. Every new patch that comes out, there's a trailer showing all the cool new stuff you can do, plus some other things that probably you can't actually do in the game. And the cinematics, like the one that comes to mind is the one with the Star Runner, the belligerent duck. A lot of stuff in that cinematic. The marketing and cinematic teams playing the finished game. And
even on a small, like, recent example, the lot containers that they've been posting about on social media that aren't in game.
Yeah.
But have been posted as if they are.
Yeah. So for anybody that didn't catch that, there was a tweet last week and an Instagram post a few days later talking about the new one SCU cargo containers that you can now buy at a cargo station, drop into your ship, store stuff in it. They released a tweet saying that, protect your cargo from people that aren't in your party with these new lockable cargo boxes, and you can hack them with a hacking chip and then steal the stuff in them, which anybody who's played Star Citizen in the last month knows that that's not in the game. So a lot of people, saw that tweet and they're like, what, this is in the game? And, went and tried it. It's not working. Surprise. But I think that just came down to probably a scheduled social media post that was supposed to be included in 322 and didn't make it, and somebody forgot to unschedule the post. So, it's not a big deal, but it just goes back to the marketing does seem to make the game appear much more playable than it is.
Yeah, exactly. So continuing on, he started talking about the marketing. He just emphasized the point that these are unfinished and early plans. And Dan continues by saying, I'll just make it a tad quick. CIG is a studio filled with lovely people. These lovely people do great work, but due to the way their marketing is set up, makes it so sharing really anything requires martyring yourself in front of the community. Do you want to risk a bunch of Discord chuds attaching your face to work they don't fully comprehend the labor behind, then bringing you up as if it was you who led Star Citizen astray? That's CIG's problem. We never get anything without a face. Even the comments we do get are all vetted and applied for, at least from what I've seen. That's what I'm just going to lay it out here. That's why I'm just going to lay it out here. An opportunity for y'all to understand the opinions of the people who are exhausted by the current communication status quo. Easy for me to say. So before we get into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, let me throw on a clarification. The following comes from a number of developers we've spoken to throughout the last year and change. Everyone has their biases, and we've tried our best to ensure everything we mention here today has at least one corroborating witness or primary evidence, such as a screenshot, video, etc. Should you find any discrepancies regarding the events mentioned, especially if you were involved, or industry-related aspects, just a hobby, please reach out. And then he's got an email. So take everything about to be mentioned with a grain of salt. It's all thanks to Montreal for meshing. At least that's what it appears to be throughout a variety of perspectives. Numerous sources and statements from leadership at public events starting in July emphasize meshing's readiness, countering CIG's year-long silence on the matter. While a demo at CitizenCon showcased the feature, as well as a number of optimistic comments from Montreal's leadership implying that the demos demonstrate the ability to fast track towards a dynamic mesh, aka meshing's vision, this confidence in their tech seems to be something more than simple buzzwords and hopium to drum up sales after a poor year, with notably around August/September, a significant reprioritization effort seemed to kick in, potentially heralding a transformative shift after a decade of delays and lackluster releases. Before delving into this change in perspectives, let's assess the status quo. CIG as a studio has historically maintained a primary focus on Squadron 42. Their monetization heavily centers around selling pieces of virtual real estate, some that can't fly either. So there's an incentive to advertise the dream of Star Citizen beyond all else. Undeniably, Star Citizen, for the most part, has been relegated to the back burner. According to our sources, this approach has adversely affected development in several ways, broadly falling into three categories: poor management, poor resource allocation, and poor tool development. We've been given a variety of accounts that tend to align with one of these three issues. While we're confident in the legitimacy of our sources, it's essential to acknowledge potential biases. Each individual carries their own agenda. While I'll avoid specifics for events, here's a glimpse into what we've heard within these three realms. Whew. Everybody ready for this?
It's a mouthful. So
It is.
we're just getting into it, everybody, so bear with us.
CIG's engine is definitely very interesting, but make no mistake, it is nowhere near the stability that is implied through advertising. Engine tools have been inconsistent, leading to communication issues and poorly planned development priorities, resulting in significant work hours lost due to tools instability. For instance, Rostar, resulting in significant work hours lost due to tool stability. I'm sorry, I'm getting all mixed up here. For instance, Rostar, reportedly an incredibly unstable tool, requires workarounds to get the bare minimum of functionality out of it. According to developers, this is one of the primary reasons that there's a lack of ground content within the persistent universe. Those involved have commented on CIG's insistence on using these tools despite their dysfunction. If rumors are accurate, it's plausible that CIG might overhaul their current version entirely to prepare for base building at the end of 2024. Note, recently reported information suggests an earlier bare bones Q1 implementation, talking about base building. Further discussions with sources imply this is beyond unlikely. All right, so a little bit there that we got. Apparently working with the engine is a pain, according to this, that Rostar is super unstable, that the CIG, because of technical issues with their own instability with the engine or whatever, they've lost a lot of work over time, it sounds like.
Yeah. Which it's, I mean, all this with a grain of salt. You know, these could be, we don't know if these are current employees, former employees.
Yeah.
They could be, you know, a little pissed off. They could have gotten fired. We don't know.
Right.
So they do talk about Rastar a lot, and the fact that if it genuinely is, you know, not a good tool to use, that's a little concerning.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Since, you know, I don't even know how many years we've been hearing it now, but they're like, yeah, we're working on the tools to get stuff out faster. You know, it's taking a long time now, but you guys just bear with us. We're making the groundwork to get these
Right.
tools, and when these tools are done, everything will speed up. We've been hearing that for forever. So I don't know. What do you think about it?
I mean, if they have had, major technical issues with that where they've had to go back, redo a bunch of work, they've lost significant work hours, it all checks out, right? I mean, Star Citizen hasn't had what has felt like the quickest development in the world. And if they're, using tools that feel like they were made by Drake, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like
I believe it.
Yeah, it's
I
almost
believe
like they're saying they could have done it quicker without trying to use the tool, because higher ups are pushing these tools to be used in the development. I guess because they've already spent so many resources trying to develop the tools.
Right.
But
It
yeah,
sounds like maybe the tools aren't adequate.
Yeah, that's just Rastar in particular. I'm trying to think of like what other they obviously have the like Planet Tech or whatever. I'm sure that's one of their tools where they can place different biomes and who knows what else. But hopefully that one's better than Rastar if this is believed to be true. But I wonder if they'll keep pushing those and try and make them better, or if they'll, here we go again, how iCache got changed after it didn't work. So
yeah. So and what do you do with so when you've got tech like this that isn't working properly, as you continue to use it to make the game, are you always going back and you're having to patch things up with whatever engine problem is happening, or do you take the time and damn it, I know we've just gone through a long period of where it felt like they were taking the time to do technical back-end stuff, and it felt like we were without significant gameplay additions there for a while. But do they take the time and just rebuild Rostar and any of these other tools that are giving them significant issues? Like, I don't, you know what I mean?
yeah, at this point though, like I was under the assumption that Rastar would kind of be put in the player's hands, not clearly the dev tools, but that would be a way for us to base build, because we're
Right.
Are we going to have ground deformation with our land claims where you're going to have to build buildings on a slope, or we don't know how any of that's going to work. But I always thought that a version of Rastar would be giving to the players to be able to place settlements. So hearing that it's not a great tool has me more concerned for base building now. But they're at the end of that paragraph there. He said, recently reported information suggests an earlier bare bones Q1 implementation for base building, but then further discussion implies that this is beyond unlikely, which I couldn't see them getting any version of base build, because at CitizenCon they said they were going to start production in Q1. So we're going to get the first implementation in when they've been working on it for 2.5 months in March? I don't think so.
I'd be shocked. Shocked. But one thing too, also, again, to reiterate on this talk about Rastar could be blown out of proportion, could be inaccurate, right?
Right. It could be, it could just be one dev that was, having troubles using Rastar and he just got pissed off at it. He went off about it, or we don't know.
But
so
according to this, though, it has, been an issue, and they have lost time over it. Dan continues on saying, these issues escalate when considering the existing workload, particularly concerning staffing. Teams that were focused on Star Citizen content usually had to fight for resources at every moment. Star Citizen-focused teams consistently fought for resources, often losing team members who had been dedicated to specific tasks, redirected to Squadron 42 teams in need. Consequently, the majority of persistent universe teams operated with minimal resources, which I feel like we've heard things indicating that in recent times, especially.
Yeah.
Once they started like to build the Manchester office, and they announced like Chris was going over to UK, Jared was going over to UK, and all these resources were going into finishing up Squadron 42. At that point, it seemed to become kind of apparent, even from the outside, that the PU team was pretty skeletal compared to who all was working on Squadron 42.
Yeah, I feel like we've known for a while that Squadron 42 has been the focus. That's not a surprise there.
Yeah. This scarcity resulted in projects stalling due to a lack of personnel, and most publicly released deliverables being driven by solo or small team efforts, rarely progressing the game substantially. Essentially, the PU functioned for years as a testing ground for newer staff before they would inevitably be sent to the squadron teams. Regarding management at CIG, reports suggest that some managers may not exhibit the most approachable behavior. There's a prevalent sentiment among insiders that CIG operates as a highly political studio, not in a politically charged sense, but more in terms of apparent nepotism within leadership decisions and their enforcement. While we refrain from divulging specific personal anecdotes or situations without full context, there are accounts portraying a prevalent leadership style characterized as rock star personalities, often lacking in effective communication, dismissing feedback, and issuing unconventional demands. Some developers reportedly felt intimidated by these problem managers, going as far as avoiding physical encounters. This culture of circumnavigating issues rather than addressing them head on has led to a sense of hopelessness among employees talked to. That doesn't sound good.
No, that doesn't
sounds
sound
to
good.
me more alarming than all the Rastar talk.
Right, but just playing other side of the fence here, that could have been, some people just don't get along. Some people, might be intimidated by management and avoid them because they're intimidated by them, where, they could have this idea of them being a rock star in their head, coming in. We don't know if these are veteran employees, if these are people fresh out of college. So while I'm not dismissing what these people say, I'm saying take it with a grain of salt, because, everybody, has their own perception of, their work environment, and being on the inside is a lot different than being on the outside. So, I mean, it definitely does sound concerning, and I could see that maybe being a thing that's happening, but I'm also thinking that, this could just be some people that have had a bad experience, and, most work environments are going to have that. The majority of people might be happy working at CIG, but there's, some people that might feel like they got, kind of the short end of the stick.
You got over 1,000 people working together. You're going to have some personality clashes. It's just going to happen.
Right. Yeah. But this is all
it's a
coming
work culture problem. Then that's a different story, right? So is this systemic, or is this more anecdotal? Like you were saying, is this, maybe one or even a few devs that have a chip on their shoulders, but, they're either projecting or they're blowing things out of proportion, or,
Yeah, we have no way of knowing. This is just, inside information that this third party was given that we are reiterating to you guys. So
exactly,
we don't know if it's true. We don't know if it's not true, but somebody has said this. This is not just made up. Somebody has said these complaints. So it's obviously coming from somewhere.
Right. Dan continues, it's natural to seek some good news amidst these ongoing shifts at CIG. Believe me, I'm right there with you. There's an unprecedented internal shift happening, and by all accounts, it's a positive turn. But before we journey into what lies ahead, let's lay down a couple of essential points. Firstly, CIG is actively charting its course for the future. And secondly, is that changes to these dates are nearly inevitable and ongoing. Based on discussions and leaked documents, then it's highly likely that, again, these changes really began in earnest in August/September. Initial schedules were to wrap in December, but look likely to continue over a duration in January. However, it's essential to hold off on forming concrete expectations until we see the outcomes reflected in actual patches or updates. Now, if all things are correct on our end, this is the timeline from now until Star Citizen 1.0. This forecast combines insights from our internal sources and statements from within CIG, both public and private. So now we are getting into what is a potential internal sort of roadmap for the next 2 years. So
Yeah.
we've talked about behind the scenes stuff with tech issues and personnel issues that are possibly happening. But now what we're about to get into, even if you don't care about any of the technical stuff or any of the drama stuff that might be coming in, this is again, don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
None of this is certain, but this does sound really cool if
I'm
this
just
is true.
I'm just going to go ahead and say a few of these dates definitely aren't happening.
Yeah.
One of them has
All right.
already been missed, but yeah, we'll get into that.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start off with Q4 2023 that just wrapped, right? They've got 322 quality of life improvements. They've got tech preview Pyro/Stanton JP planned in early/mid-November, clearly delayed LOL. I guess the
Yeah.
JP was at jump point or whatever.
Yeah, so I think we mentioned it in a few episodes back. There was some talk in the Pipeline Discord about potentially having the jump point testing before the end of December. And I think that's what that goal was, which clearly was missed.
Moving to Q1 2024. 3.23. The goal of the Q1 patch is to contain as many Squadron 42 features as possible, and then also possibly a meshing tech preview.
Which I think is all reasonable.
Yeah, that checks out to me, right? I'm sure we're going to get a ton of the Squadron 42 features that they showed at CitizenCon in the Q1 patch. We're not going to get all of them, but I am expecting a significant amount.
Yeah, from Jared's ISC the other week, I think a lot of people pretty much expected that in the Q1 patch for this year.
Yeah. And then the meshing tech preview in Q1, that sounds reasonable to me. Sure.
Yeah,
they probably will at some point in Q1.
There's nothing in here about replication layer though.
Yeah.
And server meshing is important, but I'm almost thinking replication layer is even more important because that's going to allow us to have, instanced hangars and something else we'll get into a little later in the article here.
So moving on to Q2 for 2024, 3.24. Nothing is yet known, likely finalizing what didn't make it into 3.23. And then also possibly a Pyro preview. So not a lot of information at all regarding Q2 for 2024. But that's fine.
That still includes the 6 months that Jared talked about in the ISC. So that's all I'm expecting. The first 6 months is Squadron 42 features being moved over.
Yeah, and the Q2 patch containing just whatever features didn't make it into Q1, that makes sense to me.
Yep.
Right. Moving on to Q3. Everybody ready? Everybody sitting down? Q3 2024, 4.0. Pyro, meshing, resource network, and master modes.
That's a lot.
We don't know this is for sure, but that would be one of, if not the biggest updates yet. So
Yeah,
that's the big boy, right? That's the one we've been waiting on for a long time. 4.0.
yeah,
So,
and I'm pretty sure Jared mentioned 4.0 in the ISC when he was
did.
talking about first 6 months of the year. But I'm still gonna put my money on Pyro for Christmas.
Yeah. That
For live, for release to live, I'm still putting Pyro at Christmas for live is what I'm gonna predict.
that seems reasonable. And then also we've made so many jokes about Pyro coming for Christmas every year for the past few years. So
Yeah,
it checks out that we would finally get it actually during a Christmas. We're manifesting it. Q4 2024. Planet Tech V5. New Planet Tech coming online Q4.
I think I mentioned that last episode. There was a little snippet of somebody talking about that.
Yeah.
Which we have no idea what's in it, but hopefully, with us just talking about Rastar, who knows what that Planet Tech is going to include? Because we got to start thinking about systems with large amounts of people like Terra. Terra is supposed to have billions of people, and I don't think you're going to be able to convey that with like 2 or 3 new Babbages popped around the planet.
No.
So yeah, maybe something with buildings, more settlements. I would like to see some more of those biomes from the Carrick trailer, like the rainforest and those fields of wheat. And he's like running his hands through it, gladiator style. But yeah,
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be some cool stuff like that too.
All right. So if you weren't sitting down before, make sure you're sitting down now. 2025 Q1 Squadron 42 PC and console release. What a milestone that would be if it happens. And I will say, I don't think it's necessarily going to be Q1, but 2025 does sound like a reasonable year for Squadron 42.
Yeah,
Right. That gives them a little over at least one solid year of polish, right? They've already said it's feature complete. So another year of tightening things up, squashing some bugs, maybe some balancing with combat, whatever it is that they're going to do. But a year and change of that, maybe a year and a half, maybe summer of 2025 might be a little bit more likely than Q1.
Yeah.
Or honestly, dude, I don't think it would be Q1 regardless. Even if this, let's say this is their current schedule, their current target. Are they going to just miss the holiday season like that? This game that they've been working on for so long, they're going to miss that? I don't think so. I think it's either maybe summer or they just save it for the holiday season 2025.
Yeah, I'd be okay if they saved it until the holidays of 2025. Make sure it's 100% polished, ready to go. We can't have a Cyberpunk 2077 launch with this game. It's got to be tits on. It can't be any bugs.
It cannot be Cyberpunk. It can't.
So
it can't.
Keep it polishing. We've waited this long, so why not? Polish it for another 6 months and make it right.
Yeah, even I hope it's got a great story, right? They've got an incredible cast together for Squadron 42 as far as, the actors go. And obviously I do hope that the story is good and engaging and entertaining. But even if it's a mediocre story, forget all that stuff. This game needs to function well. It needs to play well. If they put out Squadron 42 and it's glitchy and it's buggy and it's broken after all these years, I mean, to me, that's going to kill so much confidence that people have in CIG and Chris.
Yeah.
Like, even if because we can have differing opinions on, you know, what's a good story and what's not a good story. But if a game's broken, like legit broken, that's not really opinion. Oh, I can't complete this mission because the game won't let me complete it. Like that's not it needs to be objectively a well-running game. So
Yeah,
take all
because
the time and polish you need.
so many people for 10 years now have, experienced the PU and how buggy it is. And if it comes out buggy like the PU, it's just, all of any, like me personally, I'm pretty optimistic that, maybe not this timeline, but I feel like they're going to pull Star Citizen off at, a couple of years from now. And if Squadron 42 comes out just a buggy mess, that's going to kill my confidence.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the people that, is pretty optimistic about most things in this game and the development with it. So I can only imagine what the Star Citizen refunds Reddit would say if, so yeah, the one thing about this that is interesting to me is the console release. Because, I mean, it obviously, they're probably thinking about it, but that hasn't been confirmed. But if somebody from internally is saying they're working on releasing it on console, like that's pretty big. And PCs can barely run Star Citizen, so I don't know.
Yeah. I could see them doing a console release for Squadron. I don't think you ever get Star Citizen on consoles.
No.
And if you do, like we're talking next gen consoles, and then you still, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the path for Star Citizen. But a single player campaign experience, I could see Squadron hitting consoles. But that did stick out to me as well, because I don't recall hearing any sort of confirmation about them working on a console version. But regardless, according to this, in Q1 of 2025, CIG is looking to have Squadron 42 out the door. Then there is nothing listed for Q2 or Q3 of 2025. It skips straight to Q4. And for Q4 of 2025, it says...
Hold on. To your seat. Here it is.
Star Citizen 1.0 contains 5 systems on launch, Stanton, Pyro, and 3 others, and a narrative experience on launch.
Narrative experience. That sounds very MMO-like.
Yeah, it does. It does. I don't understand the phrasing of Star Citizen 1.0.
Yeah, does that mean beta?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe Star Citizen Beta 1.0, but this makes it sound like they're just looking straight to like full release 1.0, containing 5 systems on launch. I could maybe potentially see beta happening at the end of 2025 for Star Citizen, not full release.
No.
Not something that they call a quote unquote, and we know they're going to continually update, but a quote unquote finished game. Like, no. It's still going to be early access.
So that's 2 years from now, and the running joke in Star Citizen is 2 more years. But I don't know, man. I feel like this is pretty optimistic, and if I were going to make an educated guess, I would say push all of these internal dates that we just read off back by at least 6 months. Especially for big things like Pyro, Squadron 42 release, and Star Citizen 1.0. I am almost confident that none of those will hit those dates that we just said. If they do, great. I will be happily surprised. But, nobody listening, please don't get your hopes up. I mean, you can get your hopes up a little bit, but since why else would we talk about this? But, this is very, 2 years from now, I can't even remember what I was doing 3 months ago, dude. So trying to imagine what Star Citizen is going to be like 2 years from now, we don't know. So I don't see them hitting this this date, but stay tuned to find out, I guess.
Yeah. And Dan is he's gonna wrap things up here by saying, if y'all ain't swimming in the grains of salt I recommend you take here, then it's going to be your fault when you get disappointed that a good chunk of this doesn't end up happening. And I agree with Dan full-heartedly there. To say that there's a bit of internal pessimism over whether the above can happen or not in the times given is an understatement. If there's a silver lining, it would appear that this is more a learned response than a cloud of doubt. It's the first time that I see production being as serious about it. I have not seen this panic mode before. So that's a quote that he's added, I'm assuming, from some sort of inside source at CIG. It's not, credited to anybody, obviously, but what's the big deal, you might be saying? Why is this pie in the sky date the one that's worth making a hubbub about things changing? It's not a controversial thing to say that CIG's dates, internal, public, promise, planned, etc., are for the most part a suggestion. This isn't to say that CIG is absent of crunch or anything of the sort. If something needs to make a deadline, then people will work overtime to meet that deadline. What I am saying is that for the most part, the grand plan of Star Citizen was just to have it run on idle until something changed internally. As I mentioned earlier, a large majority of the reasoning behind the lack of consistent delivery can be blamed on a lack of priority for Star Citizen over Squadron 42. This has luckily been changing, though. I'll also say again that we've yet to truly see the fruits of this effort, as a lot is still in planning. So just keep this all in mind as simply one reading of events. To give a brief summary of what's happened internally, a number of CIG developers that were focused solely on Squadron 42 were moved over to Star Citizen in an effort to finally get Star Citizen going. Squadron 42's teams were to be reformed into strike teams that would be specialized towards polishing out the remainder of that game, while Star Citizen would get new blood and direction through the reformation and adjustment of already existing staff. If comments by a number of developers during CitizenCon were accurate, then this would mean that Star Citizen now has 1 to 300 more fully focused game staff. Or does he mean 1,300? It says 1-300, but
I wonder if that was a typo or just like a joke.
I don't know.
Like, oh, they have at least one more person over there, or it could be 300. Or if it was supposed to be like 100 to 300. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, it also appears that conduct and delivery is being a tad more scrutinized. Rumors have been going around that problematic staff have been reprioritized into less public affecting projects. I cannot confirm that these reports using publicly accessible means, but if true, would lend even more credence that there is indeed a change occurring deep within the roots of the project. What is this change? Direction and intent. For the last few years, CIG has been allowing the PU to continue relatively business as usual due to a mixture of reasons, almost all stemming to a preference in Squadron 42. The funding well drying up towards the center of this year, alongside previously mentioned technological breakthroughs, appears to have been motivation enough for leadership to decide on a radical new goal for the company: to release Star Citizen as a feature-complete game in 2 years. To do this, meetings have gone on and continue to be ongoing regarding a roadmap that would guide the team throughout these 2 years. The initiative is called Star Citizen 1.0. Star Citizen 1.0 represents the transition from an alpha game to the very first complete version.
Oh, shit.
That's a quote underneath where it says Star Citizen 1.0, all in caps. That sounds like skipping beta to me.
Right, yeah.
Crazy for that?
No, I mean, it's just like what we were just talking about. Does that mean, beta? Does that mean full release? But by that quote right there, it sounds like they're meaning full release.
Yeah.
Like no more wipes. This is the game. Well, obviously they're going to continue to add stuff to it and iterate on it even after it comes out. Like I don't think Star Citizen will ever stop development, if that makes sense. They're always going to make new ships. Right. They're going to, continue, even after this 1.0, if they're calling it feature complete version, we could still see, I would hope we could still see, iterations on mining and, adding even new gameplay loops that might not be in by this 1.0. I hope that doesn't, make them not add new features to the game.
Well, and just by virtue of the setting of the game, right, and what they're already, they're already hoping to hit 100 systems or whatever. Let's say they do eventually get caught up to that number. They can just keep making more locations, right, more alien races, more manufacturers, more materials that you can't find in other places, that make for crafting higher tier items, whatever. Like they could, as long as money continues to come in at the volume they need it, you can keep adding to Star Citizen forever, even after it is quote unquote feature complete as far as gameplay loops and all of that stuff. Like,
yeah, I mean, I doubt they ever stop making ships and system, like new star systems, if anything. But that's
dynamic events. That's something they could continue to give us new ones of. On some sort of regular basis. But anyway, we're a long way away from I think Star Citizen actually being quote unquote feature complete. At least going by the definition of it being feature complete, having all 100 systems that supposedly we're going to have.
Yeah. Let's see what Dan has to say about what Star Citizen 1.0 is.
So Star Citizen 1.0 is essentially an extremely optimistic initiative within Cloud Imperium to bring the game, quote, from an alpha game to the very first complete version, end quote, with an optimistic launch window of end of year 2025. I'm going to emphasize how much this optimism is laid bare throughout all the discussions I've been privy to by making sure everyone who lays their eyes on this article that this is a goal that is, in my own opinion, not likely to be met. This is due to the overwhelming scope of the proposition, which is essentially increasing the activities in the game by a factor of 10, as well as a rumored narrative experience. This experience has been described similar in interactive scope to Squadron 42, a handcrafted narrative that will serve to introduce the player into the grander verse at an approximate 10 to 20 hours of gameplay. The experience, which will mimic similar main quest lines in other MMOs, will be instanced from the main game world to allow for a tad more involvement than what players in Star Citizen have become used to. This instancing is important to inspect as we move further into more of the foundational tech coming online. By all accounts, instancing appears to be a major backbone consideration for mission content coming online in the future. While its complete scope remains elusive to us, we've already been teased to what these upcoming separated game worlds will be used for. Raid content, such as the distribution facilities. Personal facilities, such as personalized hangars and handcrafted narrative-focused mission content, such as hero NPC interactions. Specifics on the interactions with the larger shared game worlds that we're used to with these instance areas are lacking, likely due to the tech still being in its infancy. Though I'll note, of course, that its development level compared to other server tech is unfortunately unclear. There's plenty more to say on 1.0, but to give you a summary, it's the MMO-ification of Star Citizen. So what now? Is this another start to the cycle? Are we only going to get an optimistic start followed by them dropping the ball midway through the year in terms of content delivery like usual? Or is the technology required finally here? A little more than 2 months ago, we were shown 2 days of genuinely affirming demos for a game called Squadron 42. This a game that, while not entirely smooth sailing, has prevailed in marching on despite CIG's track record of reworking progress. Its leadership now looks to Star Citizen to try and steer it in a similar direction. I cannot overstate how significant of an effort this is, but I also can't overstate that this is all in active planning. Delays will likely happen. Scopes will likely be reduced. Plans will likely change. I don't speak French. No matter what the next year brings, however, it's at least moving in a different direction. Let's hope they bring on that new start in 323. What was that? C'est la vie? C'est la vie?
That sounds right.
The French part.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was it for the article. The supposed next 2 years of Squadron 42 and Star Citizen development.
That was a lot to digest.
Yeah, or at least some of the major points of it, supposedly. Yeah, man, it is a lot to digest.
There was a lot in there, the internal deal with the employees, the state of the tools, the timeline for 2 years.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this article that I just kind of threw at us today. But yeah, like the end of the article says, this will likely be changed.
Oh yeah.
But it's fun to talk about, these internal discussions are definitely things that are happening. And these are probably their current internal plans. But yeah, 100% probably going to change. I would almost bet money on it.
Yeah. If you're calling for all of these things to happen in the time windows described in this article, and that actually ends up happening, the very next thing you need to do is buy every lottery ticket you can get your hand on, because the odds of this actually happening as described here, super low, right?
Right.
But I'm sure there are some legit kernels of truth and some legit insight contained in here. It's so much brand new tech they've been building for this game. I don't even pretend to understand a lot of it. I'm not a game developer. I'm not somebody that works on servers or networking or any of this stuff. But it does make sense to me that there would be, some tools that aren't optimized very well, that are a little wonky and glitchy to use, because they're building this stuff from the ground up. And of course it's not going to be perfect. Right. I'm sure even something as, and I'm maybe talking out of school here, but even as something as established as, say, like the Unreal Engine, I'm sure there's somebody working with Unreal 5 right now that's banging their head against the wall with some sort of issue with that, or even going back to Unreal 4. Somebody's working on a game right now still on Unreal 4 or a personal project, whatever, banging their head against something that's broken. I'm sure there's something in every game engine, even the really well-established ones that have been around for a long time and iterated on and iterated again. So, talking about those problems, it makes sense to me that there's some of that. It makes sense to me that there's definitely some interpersonal problems happening, just because that's human nature. And you've got so many people all working together. Tempers are going to flare. People are going to say things wrong or take things the wrong way or say something they didn't mean. People are human, right? And do I think that the drama is just rampant in CIG? I don't get that vibe, but apparently there have been some issues, and that makes sense. But so that behind the scenes stuff, I can buy into most of that stuff. I don't know to what extent rock star personality types are walking around CIG. I'm sure there's a few anywhere if you get enough people in the same place, right?
Yeah.
But
there's 3 sides to every story, their side, your side, and the truth. So we don't know what actually goes on here, and I'm sure there's some merit to what they're saying. But yeah, don't take what they're saying for 100% truth, and don't dismiss it either, because some of that could be happening. But like you're saying,
right?
Every large company probably goes through stuff like that. That's why we have HR, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a thing we as humans deal with. So that's not surprising to hear, you know, but it was interesting. He talked about moving problematic employees to less public facing roles, which I've found a little odd. Like I can't think of any developers, you know, that have been in
disappeared.
Start going back and checking the videos. I can't think of any off the top of my head that have just like disappeared, but
what was it? Was it Drew from Around the Verse? I think those early wasn't there a guy named Drew? I'm pretty sure. Like,
maybe.
Well before Jared. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later. I don't know if you remember that guy or not, but
we haven't seen Tony Z in a while.
we haven't, Tony.
Tony's been bad.
You walking around like a rock star over there? Tony Z is a rock star. Tony Z is the one guy at CIG allowed.
Yeah.
He can have that rock star strut.
Yeah, well, man, I don't know. This Star Citizen 1.0 is kind of I don't know what to think about it because, you know, prior to reading this article today, I was always, you know, Star Citizen beta is another 3 years plus out, you know, and even after that, we're probably going to have wipes, and we're probably not going to have full release for another 5 years. Like that would be my optimistic 1.0 full release guess prior to today. So yeah, if they can pull it off in 2 years, then that'd be awesome. But I don't see it happening, especially with this talk of the narrative, the 10 to 20 hours story, handcrafted hero NPC interactions like that.
It's just like a main quest line, right? MMO style. I mean, I could see them doing that. I don't see them doing it by the end of 2025 because I don't think this Star Citizen 1.0, I don't buy this as full release. You know, this is actually Star Citizen 1.0. I think whatever this thing is that they're calling it, I think it's going to end up being beta.
Yeah.
And I could see that happening by the end of 2025, maybe early 2026, but you know, maybe they can sneak it in by the end of next year. I mean, if it's going to come out, it's got to come out at some point, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like you're saying, I could see beta.
We still need we need beta first. We need beta first.
I can't see them like full feature complete release. Everybody's keeping their shit. Like insurance is good. Like now you're going to start worrying about insurance. Like you'll never lose your money or ships again. Like this is it. I just can't see it by end of 2025.
No, not unless there's major leaps happening behind the scenes that they're not talking about just because they don't want to jinx it or something. You know what I mean? Like unless CIG is really holding back some phenomenal news, no way there's full release end of 2025. Zero chance. I mean, if that happens, I won't be mad, but I would be completely shocked in the best way possible, but completely shocked.
Yeah, I think these next 6 months are going to be, you know, very telling as to whether or not this timeline is even the least bit realistic. So we'll see what happens.
Some of this stuff, like the easiest ones, Q1, Q2 for this year, they've already told us, right? A lot of Squadron 42 features coming into the game. That one's pretty easy to be like, yeah, I can see that happening Q1 and Q2 of this year. But as soon as we even get to Q3 of this year with 4.0, that's when things get kind of like, I don't know if they're actually going to hit these target dates whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, like we were talking before, Pyro, you know, there's a good chance it'll more than likely be a Q4 thing, more of a Christmas time thing than a summertime thing. You know, the Planet Tech stuff, maybe they've barely talked about Planet Tech V5, like you said earlier. So maybe it is in a spot to where, you know, come, you know, Q4 it's ready to go, but who knows? And then Squadron 42 releasing Q1 2025. Again, all of it's wonderful if it happens like this, but
In the 5 systems when we haven't even seen the second one yet. I could sit here for another 30, 45 minutes and just speculate on those 5 systems probably, but
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's all speculation. It's good fun, but as far as, reading into it too much, I feel like we're a broken record right now, but again, take all of this with salt.
yeah, this was a out of thin air kind of article that got thrown on us today when we were planning to record. We had other stuff we were planning on talking about, but at this point it seems like it's all Star Citizen 1.0 talk, so we'll save the rest for next episode. But it was a lot to digest today.
When you sent me the link to this earlier today, I was blown away by it. Not because I'm again convinced that all of this is going to happen verbatim as described, but just because specifically that talk about the Squadron 42 release and the Star Citizen 1.0 release happening, there's enough credibility to Pipeline because they don't get everything right. Not every leak is accurate and all of that, but enough is accurate to where you do have to at least consider what's coming out of Pipeline as, being potentially valid.
Yeah, if nothing else, these dates, aren't going to be, set in stone, but in the least bit, but 100% Star Citizen 1.0 is being talked about internally, which I didn't expect to hear about that for several more years. So that's the big one to me, is that even if it's not going to be, exactly 2 years from now, that they are finally talking about the 1.0 release that we've all been waiting for. So that just the fact that they're talking about it internally, means that something's rolling in the background here that we don't know about yet.
Yeah. Regardless of how accurate or inaccurate the specifics are, it's exciting to think about. Even if they're setting that goal of end of 2025 and they miss it, just the fact that they're setting that goal, they're saying, all right, we're going to make a real attempt to do this. That's makes me hopeful for, say, 2026.
Yeah, exactly. So, let us know in the comments down below what you guys think, because I think all of these dates are mostly BS and they're not going to make it. But if you're optimistic and think otherwise, let us know and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't quite seen an article like this. You know what I mean? This one just hit different.
Yeah.
So, it's very interesting. We'll see how it shapes up. But yeah, for anybody, I'm sure we'll put a link in the video description, but also you can just Google Star Citizen 2 years out. That's what I did. It was like the first thing that came up is a Substack link.
Yeah.
All right, let's double check. I'm gonna double check the outline here. Yeah. All right. It looks like that's basically it. I wanted to just again give another quick reminder. If you've not got your Luminalia gifts, you can claim those on the Robert Space Industry website until Monday, January 8th. Also wanted to remind you that our socials are at CommLink Pod on both Twitter /X and Instagram at CommLink Pod. If you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Please be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell button so that you get notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify, if you would be so kind as to leave a review, we would very much appreciate that over there as well. It helps with the Spotify algorithm. Everything's algorithms nowadays. So if you would like to help us with either the YouTube, the Spotify, or both, much appreciated. Silvius, this was a fun one. Again, this wasn't the episode that I think either of us thought we were going to have this time yesterday, but it was definitely fun, definitely interesting, and I'm looking forward to us kind of holding on to this article and referencing it as we go further into the future, just to see how accurate this thing ends up being.
Yeah, we'll see what episode 100 has to say.
Yeah, if let me just say this. Let me see if we get to Q3 and Q4 this year, and during Q3, 4.0 happens, Pyro happens, meshing happens, the resource network comes in, master modes come in, and then in Q4, new planet tech comes online. Then I might start to give a little bit more credence. Like, they might really. Squadron 42 might be coming out early 2025, and Star Citizen Beta might really be coming out late 2025. If we can make it through this year and it's accurate, but if they start to miss stuff, within the first couple quarters,
this year will be very telling.
Exactly. So, but fingers crossed for a great year. I do think it's going to be a great year.
Yeah,
regardless if this shapes up exactly like this, I do think we're going to see some very significant progress. I think that Jared's talk about it being sort of a watershed year for Star Citizen. I think those feelings were sincere. I don't think he was BSing us. That doesn't mean necessarily he's going to be right 100%. His word isn't gospel, but I think I trust his feelings, especially because they've caught so much heat over the years for how they've communicated expectations or managed expectations with the public, and Jared has caught a lot of that because he is kind of one of the faces of the company. He's one of the most well-known people working at CIG. So for him to go out on a limb like that, if he wasn't being sincere, I don't think he would have,
Yeah, exactly. And this article kind of backed up at least that first 6 months that he was talking about. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
All right, everybody. It's great to be back for 2024, a brand new year of CommLink. Of course, we're going to keep the podcast going. We've got some more React videos that are going to be hitting the channel as we get things rolling again as well. So again, if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so that you are aware of when new episodes of the podcast and reaction videos go up. And we might have some other things during the course of the year too, but we'll announce those as they come to fruition. But yes, Silvius, again, thanks, man. This was a good one.
Yeah.
I know we talked a lot today, but it's what it's all about. Star Citizen is man, it's one of those games where we've said it before, we can talk until we're blue in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad to be back on the podcast after the break, and hope everybody had a good holiday and they're ready to go for this exciting new year. And we're going to see what's going to happen.
We're back, baby. We're back. See you next week, everybody. Be safe.
Yep. Be safe. See you next time.
Ciao, ciao.